Hi everyone, I'm here to finish today the video I started yesterday on the Bach Brandenburg Concerto number 5 in D major, that I was talking about how it escorts complex puzzling together of information that allows you to think through a very complex problem. Now, it's no coincidence that great thinkers throughout history, even today, listen to a lot of Bach and Mozart. These are the greatest top geniuses. Einstein wrote a book on Mozart. A lot of doctors and surgeons find, these pieces very helpful in settling the complexities of their own thinking. Yeah, and so so I'm trying to formulate and demystify how this works, and just had a recent experience as an ongoing part of my Northeast Brazil microcephaly investigation, which is fascinating. Way out of the box, off the page, but right on the mark. And so I got some information that I talked about yesterday, namely that animals in Virginia have having too much iron in their diet and low fertility. Now, iron is in Northeast Brazil, and they have fertility issues. So I thought, well, what's the connection there? Do they have low fertility? And indeed, they did have low fertility in 2015, 2016, when the microcephaly cases exploded in Northeast Brazil, and Northeast Brazil only. So what's going on there? You have to connect these two things. First of all, iron, low fertility, iron in North Brazil, microcephaly, and now low fertility. And Zika's in there. Zika happens to be in Northeast Brazil too, which looks a lot like the compound ferritin that harbors iron, that goes into the body and the body relies on to get excess iron and hang on to it. Well, Zika looks a lot like that, but it doesn't get the iron. I think it fools the body into thinking that the iron will be taken care of and the women get pregnant and have microcephaly. So, and then all of the details, the tiniest little details that feed together that support this embryogenesis and all the other science in the findings. So when I was able to get this one information from a colleague about 2-3 weeks ago, I guess, who is the organic chemistry professor at George Mason Prince William campus, said that there was high iron and low fertility in animals in this area. And from that, I was able to start looking in another dimension and thus find more supportive evidence for the work I've been doing on microcephaly. And when I thought, just a couple of days, I was thinking, how can I do this? And when I thought about that, the piece that kept coming up in my system was da 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 da. I started talking about it yesterday, and it's a piece by Bach. It's a piece at Bach's prime. The idea that Bach's genius has a parallel transferable dimension. And so I've listened to that piece hundreds of times in my life, just listening to it, just thinking, oh, this guy is so fascinating. This guy is so smart. Wow, how did he come up with this? What was he thinking before he wrote this? And in fact, in this piece, it branches off to his actual audition at the harpsichord, which is mind-boggling. It's so phenomenal where it takes you and how complicated it is and how mathematic and structured it is and how it pours into this overall wonderful, amazing piece of music that we just sit back and enjoy. Music is free energy. So we talked about that's the beginning of it, and then it goes on and on and on. So we talked about bum, 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 bum. That's the fact that iron is toxic, right? And too much of it does something bad to us. What does it do? Da, 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 da. Infertility. So for me, hearing those words don't scare me or anything, because there's a very consonant music support of it in my thought processes as well. And that's from music. That's from that global, deep-seated music ability and internalized rhythms and the reinforcement from it that we get by listening to it, and the passiveness we listen and let Bach do all the work. We don't even have to work. We can think about anything while we're listening to his pieces. I often sit there and think, what was he doing? What was he thinking to come up with that? How did he do that? My gosh, it's really phenomenal. So iron, infertility. Well, that's weird. Iron in Brazil. Now, what do I have to do? Thinking through that, and I did think through it, and in the process I found that there was infertility. I found that the low iron and the anemia in women who have just become pregnant is important. You need to have low iron and keep low iron. Doctors who give women iron supplements in first trimester, not a good idea maybe, huh? So what we think we know now, maybe not really what should be happening. We're supposed to get anemic during first trimester pregnancy. We're supposed to get nauseated and stay in bed and not breathe and not engage hemoglobin, which is full of iron, so that the body doesn't keep producing it. The embryogenesis is a very non-iron environment, very protected. So in the presence of Zika, which says, hey, the Trojan horse, which I believe, then the pregnancy continues and the mutations take place, as in microcephaly. And the manganese is in there too. So that's the crux of it. And it's just that when I thought, how do I think through these things like this? Because it went quite further into the oxygen needs of the sperm and the embryo, how the gestational anemia is important, what might be happening in the presence of iron that should not be happening in embryogenesis, how that stops, how iron and manganese folds proteins. When in embryogenesis, you're looking to unfold stuff, right? When something's growing, you want to unfold that DNA, unpack. We're unpacking. And that unpacking happens in a zero magnetism environment. So a lot of things that come together that explain what might be happening. I've been working on this since almost 2 years now. Unpaid, almost, well over 2,000 of prime energy hours. Why? Because it's important. It's important for us. It's healthy. In science, we learn from problems. We learn from dysfunction. And so we have to learn from this. Something really awful happened in Northeast Brazil. And it doesn't even matter who's at fault. But the fact is, how can we learn from it and maybe help these children? I have noticed also these children respond beautifully to music. Respond exclusively to music. Children with autism, it normalizes them. We have these deep networks that process the musical thing. Now, when we're healthy and we're conscious, we're like, well, no, I don't think I like that opera singing. I don't like classical music. Really? And how much of it have you heard? So basically, there's another example I'm saying with my Alzheimer's patients. When I go into them, I do. I play C. When I first come in for my first piano, and normal people would say, "Oh my God, somebody's playing the piano. Really? Oh God, really? Let's go somewhere else and talk." Not Alzheimer's patients. They're going in all directions, verbally, wandering, trying to bang through the door, yelling, hitting, aggressive, any number of bad problems. Caregivers are like, ah. And when they hear this, everything just stops for them, and they pivot to where the sound is coming from. And then I, do my, whatever, the Mozart piece that I play, and then I go and launch into my program. And the caregivers just escort them to their seat, and they just sit quietly for the time that I play, which is usually about an hour. So what is that? So they've lost all these micromanaging executive memory things that the new cortex has developed. But yet the rest of the garden has gotten richer. So they're like, music. Okay, so how can we use that as healthy adults? This is one piece that I realized that when I made this really complicated connection, gosh, I was bugging my advisor too. I was just going on and on and on about the metals and how they interact and how it, etc. Very specific, detailed analysis and follow through with this microcephaly issue. I realized that it was this piece that was in my gut. You know what I'm saying? In my pursuit, and I heard it, not in this. This is D. I hear it. C is a universal tune. It was more settled in me, and I could think on riding on that skeletal scaffold of Bach that had been in my body for years. Now, I know Bach and Mozart very well, and so it's like good food. It's like good intake. And the payoff is in aging. We know so little about aging. We don't have experience with aging people because we just live longer in the last, our lifespan is on average gone up 40, 50 years in the last 100 years. So it's unfamiliar territory, but this is how to build, and I've heard this piece, I tell you, over 500 times, probably more, maybe close to 1,000, because it's just a great piece of music. It's written a few hundred years ago, but it's a fabulous piece of music. So, dum, so, and then there's really long, and then it goes on. Dun ta da dum, dun ta da dum, dun ta da 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 da. So it's written for orchestra. So and then in the middle of it, Bach breaks out into this incredible piano solo that just goes on for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's like it's his audition for the person. I think it was the King of Bavaria. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's what he did. And so I'm just sight reading it, but it's a complicated piece, and it was written for the harpsichord. This instrument is very important as well. So we'll talk about the harpsichord another time. There's one at this church I've been practicing at. I'll try to do a session on that at some point. Thanks for listening. And, I hope I'm not getting too complex, but it's worth it. Your brain is worth it. Your ability to think through a problem is worth it. Your ability to grow old with wisdom and complexity. I'm trying to give that to you. I'm trying to formulate and demystify that for you. So it's just people wonder why Bach is so, mighty. And a lot of people can attest to, his influence on their lives. But I just realized that after 2 years of doing this work and really trying to find the solution, that this piece was with me in one of the more complex analysis of it. How sweet is that? Made it real easy to do. Thanks for listening. Cheers.